pick it up, it like droops over your arm, and you're like, oh, fuck, like this is. And it's like that's what makes it heavy. It could be the same amount of weight, but because of how it's being distributed and it's covering every volume of you, that's what makes it heavy. So like if you just think about like how can you just stay on this person and you just melt on them, that no matter where they go, like you're there,
and they're just like holding your weight
that's
whole time.
that yeah, that's when it gets suffocating. That's when it's like, just get the fuck off of me. And like I've trained with people that's like 300 pounds, like football, like linebackers, and like even like the offensive linemen, that like muscular people, they're really not that hard to train with. Sometimes like fat people are, just because like when you go to frame, it's like your arms get sucked into fat, and it's like, fuck, like there's nothing solid. And you're still stuck in place. You're like, get the fuck off of me.
Yeah, because they just naturally have that like sandbag.
Yeah. And that's why, like, you know, they're slower, but if they're on top of you, you better move. Because if you slow down in any way, they're just going to keep filling gaps. And you can't really do much about it.
Yeah. What, so you started with jiu-jitsu competitions, and then you moved into MMA fights.
Yeah.
What was that transition like? Was it more like, do you feel like that prepared you enough for those like pre-fight nerves, or was it a whole new thing?
It prepared me for sure. Because like with jiu-jitsu competitions, it's a matter of like, again, for me, I didn't care how they were showing up. I was showing up with the intensity of like, I'm looking to break, I'm looking to put people to sleep and dominate. So I'm preparing for somebody to have the same mentality against me. So then if I come across it, it's not like this big shock. And that's where like the bullies of competition come into play. They're okay with being the bully and being the tough guy, but they meet somebody with equal opposition, they're like, what the fuck is this? And then they fold. So like that I got to prepare for. What was different was that there's very little chill time. There's absolutely no chill time in the fight. That's the biggest difference with jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu, that intensity is there. You can still break something. You can still put somebody to sleep. But the fact that like once the fight starts, it's like there's punches, there's kicks, especially like professional. There's punches, there's kicks, there's knees, there's elbows, there's takedowns, there's the cage. To where like in jiu-jitsu you get reset out of bounds, and people would just use going out of bounds as like a scapegoat. It's like there's the cage, then you're on the ground, then there's ground and pound, then there's elbows there, then there's still jiu-jitsu, and then there's the wrestling. So like there's no point that, and if you watch jiu-jitsu, there's always a point. So like there's not really much of that chill time. So the other thing too with MMA is there's three to four different energy systems. There's the striking aspect, the clinching, four. The striking aspect, the clinching aspect, the wrestling aspect against the cage, and then there's the jiu-jitsu aspect. And the way that energy is used is very completely different. The way that you breathe is completely different. So the best thing is to understand how to transition your breathing pattern from one energy usage to the next, and getting your body comfortable with knowing, okay, this is the energy that we're using in this mode. So if you know you're going to go from striking to grappling, like making that shift. So that fighting got me to really amplify my presence more than anything before, because there's also so much happening. And it's like, I wasn't able to describe it like this at the time, but what's happening is you can feel the energy of everybody that's fighting that night. You can feel like the people that are nervous, the people that are scared, the people that are overly confident, the people like, you can feel all of that. You can feel the energy of the crowd, of their nervousness and their rambunctiousness sometimes from being drunk, and then you have like all that kind of creates this like vortex of energy because you also have your corner and their corner, then it's you, then it's them, and it's like all this, and then you're like in the eye of the storm, and then you have to block all of that out, hear your corner, be present with the person that you're fighting with, see their patterns. And then for me, a biggest thing was see their patterns, but be honest with myself if I'm showing a pattern, because then I need to break that right away. So that's something that only forced me to dive deeper into that space of just like void, complete void. So it's just like I'm not looking for, because I had to also develop the confidence overall to where like I don't need to just go for jiu-jitsu in order to win.
Mm-hmm.
Before, as I was developing my striking, I was like, okay, like how can I use my striking to get to jiu-jitsu? And that worked very, very well. And it was still something that I had in my back pocket because anybody knew if it got to the ground, that's your ass. So it's like, but I knew I wanted to be dominant everywhere. And once I got to that point, using Muay Thai, I did like Muay Thai, boxing, jiu-jitsu. I mean, Muay Thai, boxing, Taekwondo for striking. And once I had that blend together, and I was efficient and I mastered my distance, then I was just like, okay, now I'm not tied to any way of beating you. I could rock you on the feet. I could take you on the ground and put you to sleep. So that added to that space of like complete, I'm open. Mm-hmm. Whereas before it was just like I was in that space, but there was like a specific strategy behind it.
So similar to like the like hunting for one submission.
Yeah.
It's like you're not hunting for the jiu-jitsu finish. You're like taking what is available.
Yeah.
And dominating in that.
Yeah. And it's just, and the biggest thing with fighting is like, it also forces you to trust yourself completely, because you just, the main thing I would tell myself is just like, I know what to do and when to do it. I don't need to think about like all these scenarios. I'm like, oh, prep for scenarios. Now I have strategies. But going into the fight, it's just like, okay, like I trained it to the point that it's automatic. So now it's just, I completely let go. I release. I know what to do and when to do it.
Yeah. And that's probably like that. Would you say that allows you to have that presence?
Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, I don't need to worry. I don't need to overthink anything.
Yeah.
I got it.
Because it's just, the same way that you know for a fact when you walk, like, you know what to do and when to do it. Something's in your path, you know how to step over it or how to walk around it. You trip and stumble, you know how to regain your balance. So it's like, those are a few different scenarios. You don't overthink those scenarios. You just know you practice that so much of regaining balance. You practice stepping over things. You practice walking around them so much that sounds like a ridiculous thing to like, oh, yeah, of course, like that's automatic for me. But when you were figuring out how to walk, let somebody put some shit in your path. You're like, hold the fuck up. Like, I just got this down. You saying I got to bring my knee to my chest? Like, what is this? So it's like, but that same level of trust that you have when you walk, if you apply that to everything, you're unstoppable. It's like you also have that same level of trust in driving. It's like somebody cuts you off, you know how to stop. There's something in the middle of the road, you know to brake or drive around. Or whereas like, when you first started driving, it's like 10 and 2. I'm like, you're looking at the speedometer to see like, are you going fast or are you going too slow? And it's like, hey, you're braking and you're like jerking. It's just
yeah. And like everything is, yeah, you gotta be on high alert.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was like your motivation source? What was like the fuel behind it when you were fighting?
The fuel behind it was, I just knew that I was the best. I just knew that I was the best, and like I wasn't willing to not be a champion. And I also had the experiences before of like getting bullied. I had the experiences of just like, and also like, the struggle was a very huge fuel. Like I'm struggling with money at the time because like everything's going towards training.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like MMA is just not popular. Like when I was fighting, like it just became like legal in New York. Like that was this whole big thing, like just fairly recently, a couple years ago. And like jiu-jitsu started to get popular. People started to know what it was. But like I was in the midst of it while it was coming onto the scene. So like there wasn't much money in it, but they were still charging the same amount. So it's like between struggling with money, not being able to do the things that I also wanted to do, because I also couldn't travel. I also couldn't do any of those things. And that was like a battle of navigating like self-worth. So that would just combine with like past pains. I will concentrate that towards fighting. And that for me, what I kept saying a lot when I was fighting was just like fighting was a way for me to make life fair. Now there's no other things that like are in the way. It's like me and you one-on-one. It's like I get to just go directly to you and handle you. Whereas before it's like, you know, if I'm dealing with like financial stuff or whatever, it's like then I have like, you know, somebody collecting a debt that is like a company. It's like all these middle people. There's no middle people. It's me and you. I go straight to you and I get to handle you exactly how I've been preparing to. So that was a way for me to just like, that's how I felt like I could create my life. Was like I get to show myself that I am the champion that I know myself to be. Despite feeling defeated outside in life, this is something that I get to show myself what I know to be true. And then everybody else I get to show you to.
So everything else in your life, all of the places where you didn't have control, like helped you just focus your energy on this one area where it was like,
yeah,
you can control this and like it's fair.
Yeah, it was like, it was this very big proving energy, proving to myself, but mainly proving to the world that I was just like worthy of the life I was living and worthy of the life that I knew I was capable of. Rather than saying like, I can do this, it was just like, let me show you that this is actually true. Because I know everything else makes it seem like it's bullshit and that it's not. And me saying that I'm the best and like I'm really, really good. And I know it seems like that's a facade. Let me show you. Because every time I show you, it's undeniable. And that was the one thing that I felt like nothing could get in the way of me showing that in fighting. It's clear cut.